I'm Brandi Kruse. Coming up today on Undivided, Governor Jay Inslee is absolutely shameless, and there is no low too low when it comes to protecting his failed Climate Commitment Act.
They're trying to take away $200 from these families.
Plus, the notorious Belltown Hellcat is back in court, and Democrats are rolling out their latest 2024 strategy, calling everyone who disagrees with them weird. Bold. Let's see if that works. That and more coming up today on Undivided. Remember, you can support our show for just $5 a month by signing up at undividedpod.com. Hello and welcome to Undivided. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. Got to start the show with a task for Nicole. Nicole, on the bookshelf behind you, you see that swear jar?
I do.
Take that down. Hide it.
Okay,
Hide
deal.
the swear jar today. And to my sweet, sweet husband who thinks I'm far too classy to be swearing on my show, I highly suggest you don't watch the show today. And I also suggest removing children from the room because I have maybe never been more pissed off. You know, I joke sometimes about Jay Inslee and how dishonest he is, because sometimes it gets to the point where it's genuinely laughable that he was able to serve as the governor for 12 years and that people kept reelecting a man who thinks so little of them, who thinks you are so fucking dumb. That's what he thinks of you. He thinks you're dumb. And that coming from Jay Inslee, who I'll say I've interviewed a lot of politicians in my life, and he is nowhere near the top of the list in terms of intelligence. Interviewing him was like interviewing a wall. But he thinks you're dumb. And he thinks that as long as he says it, you'll believe it. And why wouldn't he think that? I mean, he's been put it back in office time and time again. The media doesn't call him out for his blatant falsehoods. But, you know, it's one thing for politicians to lie. I think politicians lie all the time on both sides of the aisle. But it's another thing when your lies come at the expense of the poor and the working class, and then you want to hold yourself up as some champion of the downtrodden. That's what offends me. And as someone who grew up, you know, lower middle class, as someone who had a mom raising 4 kids, a father who was completely absent mentally because he was too busy drinking and doing drugs, a mom who worked her ass off to provide for our family, as someone who knows what it's like for the phone to be ringing off the hook and you're the creditors coming after your mom, for someone who knows what it's like to stand at a gas pump and decide how many gallons you can put in. Is it 1 today? Is it 2 today? Can we put in enough gas to get to where we're going? It's genuinely offensive to me when someone who believes that he's a leader, who holds himself up as a leader, who holds himself up as someone who cares about the working class, will lie to them, will insult their intelligence, and will hurt their family's ability to put food on the table, all in the name of protecting his own freaking legacy. It drives me nuts. And it makes me sad. And I thought we were all out of, you know, the depths of how much he could spin and lie around the Climate Commitment Act, but he just keeps one-upping himself. And I saw some clips on social media this morning that genuinely have me pissed off. So I want to set the stage because you guys are going to start getting, at least some of you are going to start getting either in the mail or an email that looks like this one. So this came to us from an Undivided viewer. Nicole, if you could pull this up for me. So an Undivided viewer sent this to us and said basically like, I think this is from the Climate Commitment Act and the bribery that the governor was trying to put down. The subject line of the email, $200 credit on your PSE bill. It says, great news. You'll be getting a $200 credit on your PSE electric bill from the Washington Families Clean Energy Credits Grant Program. This program uses revenue to help families and businesses reduce energy costs and reduce emissions. It's a win-win situation. You get help with your electric bill, and the state uses the funds to promote a cleaner environment. Well, I think for a struggling family, that sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Energy rates have been high, gas prices have been high, groceries have been high. $200 for a family that's struggling financially is quite a bit. Now, I don't expect Jay Inslee to know that. He hasn't struggled financially for years and years and years, if ever. So he might say he cares about the working class, he cares about what's doing right for the working class, but he doesn't even have a clue what it's like to be in a situation where $200 is a make or break for you. Or maybe he does, and maybe that's why he's doing this. So this is bribery. If you get this in the mail, if you get it in an email, I want you to know what it is. And I want you to be able to articulate to your friends and your family what it is if they get one too. It's bribery. And more than that, it's a big fucking middle finger from Jay Inslee. That's what it is. And in fact, I would argue, and I won't tell you what to do as someone, particularly if you're struggling financially. But it gives you an option here. You saw the bottom of that email. If you don't wish to have this credit applied toward your balance with PSE, please email us. If you can afford it, tell them you don't want it. Tell them to take the bribe and shove it up their ass. Because that's what it is. And it doesn't even come close to helping working families in this state recuperate the money that Jay Inslee has taken from them and lied about taking from them through the Climate Commitment Act. $200. That's a spit in the face. So you might recall Governor Jay Inslee pushes through the Climate Commitment Act. It started collecting money at the beginning of last year through the sale of carbon credits at auction. And Governor Inslee had sworn up and down that this won't increase gas prices. I'll play some of that video coming up. But it did increase gas prices. And for that reason, Brian Haywood and Let's Go Washington, they ran an initiative to repeal the CCA, Initiative 2117. It's going to be on your ballot in November. When it became clear this past legislative session that not only did Initiative 2117 have enough signatures to make it to the legislature, more than 400,000 Washingtonians signed it, but that the legislature, was going to have to make a decision. Do we take action or not take action? And either way, it was going to end up back in the hands of voters. So when it became clear that Initiative 2017 was not only going to go to voters this November, but that polling suggests that passing Initiative 2117, which would repeal the CCA, is very popular. What did Democrats in Olympia do? Well, they decided that the only thing they could do at that moment is try to bribe people. And so they talked about, for the first time ever, taking some of the revenue collected as part of the CCA and giving it back to middle and low income Washingtonians in the form of an energy credit. So that's what this $200 credit is. You might recall we discussed this when it was being conversed in the legislature, that they were going to be like, hey, the CCA is costing people money. We won't admit that. But why don't we bribe people with a $200 credit and include in the law that it has to be paid to them before the November election? And then they wanted to act like it wasn't a bribe, but they explicitly said it has to be paid to them before the November election. And that's what you're seeing now. That's what these emails and these letters are about. This is the bribe that's going out because Democrats made it so before the November election. And as part of this bribe, they are explicitly saying that this is a result of the CCA, that you're getting these $200 because the Climate Commitment Act, which is going to be on your ballot in November, is so wonderful. This is how the Washington State Department of Commerce is framing it in a press release they put out this week. Up to 675,000 Washington households will see electricity bills reduced by $200 thanks to State Climate Commitment Act. No mention that the reason they have that money is because they took it from you already. That the $200 they're giving back to you, the pennies they're giving back to you, the pittance that they're giving back to you is money they already took from you. And not only is it money they already took from you, it's money that they've denied for the last 2 years that they've been taking from you. And they want you to be grateful for it. They want you to be thankful for it. And energy ratepayers who don't know better might be thankful for it. Like I said, $200 is a lot for a family that's struggling. So Governor Jay Inslee, of course, got in front of the cameras yesterday. Oh, we're rolling out these $200 to people who are struggling. So we just had to have a press conference about it, announcing the program. Here's a clip.
It is a great thing that 675,000 households are now eligible and are soon going to get a $200 tax credit, a $200 credit on the utility bill.
Yeah, just to point out a little Freudian slip there, Inslee. Remember all along they said, oh, the CCA isn't a tax? It's not a tax. Oh, this isn't a gas tax. No. And then he calls it a tax rebate, so you can't really have one without the other. Quick Freudian slip, and he corrected himself. Let's keep listening.
And, we've wanted to help these families. We know we have families that are burdened with a disproportionate cost on the utility bills compared to their income. We're happy to do it. There's one reason and one reason only we've been able to do it. And that is we have the Climate Commitment Act. The Climate Commitment Act has allowed us today to get people $200 off on the utility bills. That's a big deal for families in this income bracket.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. The only reason families are getting this $200 credit is because of the Climate Commitment Act. The only way it's possible is because of the Climate Commitment Act. Because where is that money coming from? The Climate Commitment Act. It was taken from you already. And hundreds of millions of dollars into the CCA coffers. So yeah, when he says the only way this is possible to give these families a $200 tax credit is because of the CCA, that's true. Without the CCA, though, they would have had that money already. It never would have been taken from them by the government. And now, don't get me wrong, I've said this all along. Had Governor Inslee been honest about the CCA, been honest about what it would do to people, this is the climate governor. He says he cares about the climate. If he thought that auctioning off carbon credits and the CCA is the thing we need to do to save the environment and save the planet from certain destruction, and he came out and said, yeah, it's going to raise your energy rates. Yeah, it's going to raise gas prices. Yeah, it's going to raise the cost of groceries, but this is what we have to do. Climate change is an existential threat to our very existence. That's a different conversation then. But he didn't have the humility to do that because he doesn't care to tell you the truth. Remember, he thinks nothing of you. He thinks nothing of you. So what did the governor do for the last 2 years? What did the governor do starting from the point where they started to debate whether to pass the Climate Commitment Act? He was asked repeatedly whether he would be honest. This is several years ago now. Whether he would be honest, at least, that the Climate Commitment Act would raise gas prices. Remember what he said.
At what point are you going to tell the people of Washington State that they're going to possibly see much higher gas prices next year because of the CO2 emissions tax?
Well, that's not true. They are not going to see much higher gas prices, maybe even lower than they are today. This is going to have minimal impact, if any, pennies. We're talking about pennies, potentially.
And of course, that wasn't true. And Governor Inslee knew that wasn't true, by the way, because the first time they tried to pass the CCA back in around 2014, his own staff testifying before the legislature, it's all on video, we've played it on the show before, they said at the time, apparently honesty was more important to Inslee in his second term than it is now in his final term. They said, we want to be honest. This is going to raise gas prices, and here are our predictions. And then all of a sudden, the same policy a few years later, Governor Inslee is saying, no, it won't raise gas prices. What are you talking about? He knew all along it would raise gas prices, and it did instantly. Instantly, the second the carbon auction started, gas prices went up nearly 50 cents a gallon. So when it became undeniable that the CCA had absolutely raised gas prices, when it became very clear that he couldn't continue to go around and say, no, it's not raising gas prices, gas prices aren't up, what did he do then? Well, he tried out some other laws. He suggested that gas prices were up so high, not just because of the CCA, but because of a poorly timed pipeline maintenance.
Much of it is not related to this law because the oil companies have shut down a major pipeline, allegedly for maintenance, although why they do it in the summer, I don't know. That has restrained supply, and that has been a significant reason for these recent cost increases. It's not all this law.
Well, that didn't work either because people pointed out, well, that pipeline serves other areas. They're not seeing the same sort of increases. And so that doesn't really work either. So the next lie that he defaulted to is, okay, gas prices are going up, but this isn't because of the CCA. This is because greedy gas and oil companies are using the CCA to line their pockets.
They're not just passing it on. They're padding their pockets with this.
The author of these gas prices are the oil and gas companies, and their rapaciousness, their greed is beyond imagination.
As people are struggling to afford gas and groceries and their energy rates are going up, that's how much your governor thinks of you. That's how dumb he thinks you are. And that's how desperate he knows you are. Being in a financial pinch as a family, when you have mouths to feed, when you have a job to get to, when you have two incomes and you can barely afford to get by. That's a desperate place as a family. And that is a man who is taking advantage of that desperation. There's no low too low for him. He is shameless. And after he announced this program yesterday, we saw how truly shameless he is. And I'll say, never ceases to amaze me. But then when I think he's gone as low as he can go, he goes even lower. You might recall back in June, the governor, now we have Initiative 2117 that's heading to the ballot. Polling shows that voters like 2117. They want to pass it. They want to vote yes and pay less. They want to repeal the Climate Commitment Act because they've become wise to his lies. And so what did he say in June? Well, he comes out and he says, well, just so you know, even if you pass Initiative 2117, there's no guarantee to lower gas prices. So he just keeps changing the story and changing the story and changing the story. Then he rolls out this $200 bribe. And he now wants you to be mad, not at him for lying to you all these years about it, not at him for pushing the CCA at any cost and for any reason, not mad at him for the fact that your family has had hundreds of dollars taken from them as part of the CCA without any honesty attached to it. He wants you to be mad at. And he told Chris Daniels of Como News when he unveiled the $200 tax, as he called it, credits yesterday, that you should really be mad at the people who are pushing Initiative 2117 to repeal the CCA because they want to take this money away from you.
Are you trying to bribe voters with this?
No, they're trying to take away $200 from these families. Who wants to take away $200 credit from a family to help them with their costs of these low-income folks? That's reprehensible. You know what else? It's weird.
He calls it reprehensible. I want you to really let that soak in. Nicole, can you play that cut for me one more time?
Are you trying to bribe voters with this?
No, they're trying to take away $200 from these families. Who wants to take away $200 credit from a family to help them with their costs of these low-income folks? That's reprehensible. You know what else? It's weird.
Reprehensible. To take away a credit that families are getting that is just their own money being given back to them. And as an expert will tell us on the show tomorrow, a fraction of what's been taken from them as part of the CCA. So Inslee reaches in your pocketbook. For an average family, he takes about $600, lies about it, says it's not him taking it, it's the greedy gas and oil companies taking it. They take that $600, they put it in their coffers, and then they say, hey, we want that money to keep coming in. So why don't you just give them a little chunk of that back, one-time payment, not even a reoccurring payment, as a credit, $200 on their energy bill. And then we'll call the other side evil. We'll call the other side evil for wanting to take away an energy credit that's being given to them. That's just their own money. Because our side, the side that is in favor of Initiative 2117, the side that's in favor of repealing the Climate Commitment Act for all the reasons that I just laid out and for all the dishonesty attached to it, our side knows that the cost savings to you as an average family if the CCA repealed far outweighs an insulting $200 bribe. Far outweighs, because remember, it's a one-time bribe right before the election. It's a one-time bribe. You're paying about $600 a year because of the CCA. And you're going to be paying that every single year for the last year and a half. It's about to get much worse. So the amount that an average Washingtonian, an average family is paying at the gas pump and increased energy rates as a result of the CCA, I wouldn't be surprised if it gets somewhere in the realm of $1,000 in the next couple of years. But Governor Inslee wants you to believe that we're the bad guys for trying to take away a one-time $200 credit that he's throwing at your feet as a bribe in favor of coming out from underneath a program that is costing families hundreds of dollars a year. He's not a good person. I don't think I've ever said that about him. He's a bad person. I hate saying that about people. I hate saying that about politicians. You know that. I mean, when I've talked about Bob Ferguson in the governor's race, I've said, hey, he's always been perfectly pleasant to me, and I'm sure he's a great dad and a great parent. I just don't agree with his politics. Jay Inslee has shown us that he is a bad person, that he doesn't care who suffers. He doesn't care how dishonest he's being, as long as he can keep his legacy intact. And his legacy is the Climate Commitment Act. And I have given you no fewer than 20 reasons to vote yes for Initiative 2117. If not for any other reason than for your dignity. To say, I'm not going to support something that has been propped up on lies. If he can't tell the truth about it, he doesn't deserve to keep it. From the very beginning, all I wanted from him was the truth. I went to Olympia, recall, I grilled him about it. I laid out the case for him, and I said, all evidence, including your own staff, suggests that the CCA is raising gas prices. Why won't you just admit it? And even in that moment, he wouldn't admit it. He didn't have the humility to admit it because he doesn't possess it. And that's what I now realize. He doesn't possess an honest bone, an ounce of humility. And it is worth getting that mad about, because it comes down to the ability of someone to provide for their family. And he wants to call us the bad guys now. What he calls reprehensible? Are the 400,000 plus Washingtonians who signed their name to Initiative 2017, are they reprehensible? Or as he called them, weird? We'll get to that more later. Democrats all of a sudden calling everyone and everything they disagree with weird. It's really, I won't say it's shocking because it's not shocking, but I think people need to decide what your expectation is of elected leaders. Whether you expect them to be honest with you, whether it offends you when they take money from you and don't tell you why, or don't even acknowledge that they're doing it. I think there are a million reasons to repeal the Climate Commitment Act. There are a million reasons to vote yes on Initiative 2117. But one of the biggest ones is just to show that you have dignity and that you're not going to let the government or a governor treat you that way, like you're a moron. Jay Inslee should be ashamed of himself. I have come to the conclusion he is not a good person. I cannot wait till he's out of office, and I can only hope that the people of Washington State replace him with someone who actually cares about you. It's really unbelievable. All right, coming up next, we had mentioned that there are some efforts underway to ease the massive eviction backlog in King County, at least, but do they go far enough? The head of the Rental Housing Association will join us to discuss. First, if you're in the market to sell your home, maybe you're a landlord and you're sick of it, and you've had a squatter and you finally got him out and you're like, I'm taking this bad boy out of the rental pool. Don't blame you. We'll reach out to our friend Wes Jones of sellwithwes.com. He's been doing this for a long time. And he actually says, despite the interest rates and some uncertainty, now is a pretty good time to list your home.
King County, median $1 million. Homes are still selling very, very quickly. If you want to do something this year, give me a call. I'd love to start the process now. I think that things will be moving very swiftly through probably October. And then as the election starts to come out, get closer, people always pump the brakes. But for all of you who are out there that are thinking like, I can't sell my home because I need X amount, you're probably at the peak right now. It's probably worth more than it's ever been than previous times. So what are you waiting for?
What are you waiting for? Visit sellwithwes.com. Sellwithwes.com. It'll give you a free market analysis to talk about, how well your home is positioned given all the market factors. And you can also use their home value calculator right there on the website. Just plug in your address, find out how much your home is worth. It might be worth more than you think. Sellwithwes.com, a better way to sell your home. All right. I really think the public pressure campaign has helped with the eviction squatting situation. I mean, for the love, how many Saturdays in a row did Jascaron Singh, the Bellevue landlord who's got a deadbeat tenant who hasn't paid rent in 2 years, how many Saturdays in a row did he have to lead a protest outside the guy's house, his house, to get attention toward this issue? And I mean, we've talked about this issue a ton on the show. The laws in Washington State are completely backward. I'm not saying there shouldn't be protections for tenants, but our laws are designed to assume the very worst of every single landlord and to assume that if they want to get rid of a tenant, that they must be doing it because they're just horrible, horrible human beings. And I just refuse to believe that. So now we have laws that are set up so you can have someone like Sang Kim, Jascaron Singh's tenant, who hasn't paid rent in 2 years. Jascaron hasn't been able to get a court hearing to force him out. taxpayer funds have been used to pay Sang Kim's back rent to the tune of $50,000. So here you have a guy who has money, has a job, wife has a job, can pay rent, but he's choosing not to. Because why would he, when he can be dishonest and game the system and game the laws and have his rent paid for him by the taxpayers and can live in a nice house in Bellevue rent-free for 2 years? So I hope and I think that this issue got enough attention that cooler heads are sort of like, okay, we've really got to reevaluate the situation. And we don't know what lawmakers are going to be willing to do in Olympia this coming legislative session, but at least in King County last week on the show, we had the presiding judge, Judge K2 Shaw, who came on and said, effective immediately, they are taking some steps to try to ease the eviction backlog in terms of court hearings. So as new cases come in, they're going to triage them. They're going to attempt to get people hearings within 30 days, much different than like people like Jaskaron, who the court hearing date he was given last month was March of 2025, which is an insane situation. So is it enough though? You know, the courts can only do so much on an island, you know, unilaterally without consulting lawmakers about the laws that are on the books, etc. So we had Judge Shaw on last week to go through this, and we do a segment every Tuesday with the Rental Housing Association of Washington. If you're a landlord, I highly suggest checking them out, rhawa.org. So we invited Sean Flynn with the RHA on to react to the steps that the court is going to take to see whether he's satisfied with those steps. Sean, welcome back to Undivided.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Have we shamed King County into maybe trying to look like they care about the eviction backlog? Is it working?
Well, I mean, I think the judges care because they're the ones dealing with the backlog. And, you know, RHA commends Judge Shaw's leadership on this to get some sort of solutions going forward. And I think the thing to remember, too, is that the judges don't write the laws. They are stuck having to implement them and rule on them. And so while I'm very excited about and hopeful about the changes that he's changed in terms of how the eviction process will work, he doesn't have control, or any of the judges don't have control over the underlying laws that are still making it take a long time.
Yeah. So let's go through, just practically speaking. I know this isn't going to be a panacea, but what are the changes that you think might actually help?
Oh, the biggest thing that has happened last week with those the process changes, the rule changes, is that when there isn't space on the commissioner's calendar, then those cases will be moved to the civil docket. So what's important for everyone to understand is that most eviction matters are heard in front of what's called a court commissioner. And they have, the court commissioners do a bunch of stuff. They do guardianship work. They hear things about probate. They do, protective orders. The commissioners are sort of the workhorses of our civil system. Now, then there are judges. Judges, they hear trials, they deal with criminal issues, and generally the process was supposed to be an expedited manner for an eviction process. So there was probably an appropriate place to hear them was in the front of the commissioners. It's shorter, more expedited proceedings happen in front of the commissioners. With Judge Shaw's new rules that we can move contested cases when the commissioners don't have time, which they clearly don't have any time anymore, to the judge's docket, it means things will be heard more quickly in front of judges. I don't want to speak for the judges, and there are 50 some of them in King County, but I don't imagine they're very enthused about their calendar being clogged up now too, because our system is already full. Those judges are hardworking civil servants who already had a whole bunch of work in front of them. So adding the evictions to their calendars is going to be challenging for them, but at least it gives a place for those matters to be heard because they just haven't been heard.
Yeah, one of the things I asked Judge Shaw about when we had him on the show last week is like someone like Jaskaran Singh, who's now 2 years into his ordeal. He's been given a court date of March of 2025 at the earliest. And I said, you know, are you going to prioritize people who have been waiting the longest? And that does not sound like what they're doing, that they're going to triage like the newest cases. Do you think that's the best approach?
I think there's no good approach here. I think the issues are systemic, and I feel for Judge Shaw, and for those who are stuck, like, the judicial system is stuck like us. We're stuck in the system that was built in Olympia, right? The judges have to implement the rules the way the legislature wrote them, and whether we like it or if the judges like it or not, we have certain rules we've got to work through. And sometimes those rules come into conflict, which really puts the bench in a tough spot. So on one hand, the legislature is like, yeah, hear these issues quickly and timely and move along. But at the same time, they institute right to counsel, which makes the whole thing take 7 times as long. I think real reform, in order to fix this, we need to change the way the RCW that governs evictions functions.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to pit you against judges or anything like that, of course. Judge Shaw was great in explaining all this to us last week. I did ask him one thing, though, that I'm curious to get your opinion on. I had asked him, you've got the right to counsel. So you've got Housing Justice Project attorneys being assigned to help some of the tenants. And what we've been told by some landlords is they feel like those attorneys are intentionally delaying cases for as long as they can. I asked Judge Shaw if that's something that they've seen, and he said no. But if they had reason to believe that's what was happening, they would reject efforts to delay cases. What do you think that's happening? Do you think there are intentional efforts to delay so tenants can stay longer?
With all due respect to the presiding judge, in my practice and what I hear at the Rental Housing Association is that there are delay tactics that are used by the other side that, and by the other side, what I mean is housing justice, to prolong a person's tenancy in a property. And I think that's a function of the way housing justice looks at the court process, that any minute that the tenant stays in the unit is a minute that person is maintaining their housing and therefore is a win, right? The housing justice lawyers look at it as any moment that person's not evicted from that home is a win for their client. And they, as lawyers, and this is what happens when you get lawyers are obligated to zealously advocate for their client. The larger question systemically is that the best option for their client long-term? And is it the best option for our housing systems, right? Because every minute that tenant is sitting in a unit that they can't afford to pay for and is running up the tab on a housing provider, it ends up to that. And in the end, that tenant ends up owing the money because there's no getting around that. So a lot of these tenants walk away with massive judgments that will chase them for years down the line. And then also that housing unit goes away at the end, especially if it's from a small housing provider, because they will just sell the unit because they don't want to have that happen to them again. And now we're in a housing crisis with not enough units, right, to begin with, and we're having the judicial system systematically remove more and more units from the market, which is not good for anyone, renters or housing providers. So again, I think that the larger issue isn't that the judges aren't working hard enough or they don't see the inherent tension between the parties. It's that the judges are stuck implementing a system built in Olympia that was designed to do this.
Yep.
This is what the system was designed to do.
Well, that's what happens when politicians, dictate things down to the rest of us without input, without real input and asking the questions that need to be asked of the people who they need to be asked to. Just one more question on this, Sean. So you mentioned, and I think we acknowledge, the judges are going to do what the judges can do, and they've taken some steps. Is there anything else at this juncture you think that is in their control, absent political interests, that Judge Shaw could do that would help even more?
I would like to see a procedural stakeholder panel. I would like to see I would like to see housing justice and a group of the landlord association lawyers sit down with either presiding or one of the other, maybe the commissioners, and say, what can we do to avoid some of these constant continuances? And if there's a way we can, just even a good example, but just having the defenses filed ahead of time would be great, because oftentimes what happens is that the housing provider walks into the show cause hearing and has no idea what they're defending against. And so it sort of becomes, it's a trial by ambush, right? And so if we could figure out a way to make the system more fair and more efficient, right? So at least we knew what we were talking about at any given hearing. Because as it is now, we have a lot of hearings to just continue hearings.
Yeah, waste of time.
Is not efficient use of the court's time, nor the housing provider's time, nor housing justice time. So if we could sit down and try to hammer something like that out, I think that would be a great next step.
I agree. All right. This is not the last time we're going to talk about this, obviously, but a little bit helps for sure. So Sean Flynn, we appreciate your time as always.
Thanks so much. You have a great day.
Again, Sean Flynn there with the Rental Housing Association of Washington. And, he credit to the courts. I think they acted a little too late. And I mentioned that to Judge Shaw last week that, what was really stopping you from doing this? I think they could have done this probably months ago to try to speed up the process of getting hearings for these landlords and tenants. As Sean pointed out, if you're a tenant and the Housing Justice Project is like, yeah, just keep delaying it, we'll keep getting it delayed for you. And then what? In 2 years, you've got some big back judgment against you. How are you going to pay it? How are you going to get another place to live? So it's not doing a service to the tenants either. If you're going to get evicted, the best scenario is a quick resolution. And then you both move on. So the judges are doing what the judges can do right now. It's up to lawmakers in Olympia. And hopefully there's been enough shame around this issue to say you're going to hurt the availability of housing for renters if you keep this up. It's not fair. Like, that's someone's property. They've put reasonable, rules in place, like you have to pay your rent to live here. They don't want to kick someone out on the streets, but they shouldn't be forced to continue to house someone who has refused to pay rent for 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 2 years, whatever it is. That just doesn't make sense. Come on, Democrats in Olympia, that just doesn't make sense. Let's fix it, and let's fix it soon. That segment is brought to you in partnership with the Rental Housing Association of Washington. We've been talking to them every week to try to maintain attention on this issue so it doesn't fade from the news. And if you're a landlord in Washington, join the RHA because they can help you deal with some of these stupid laws that you're being forced to deal with. So rhawa.org, rhawa.org. All right, in our segment, Unbelievable, I don't know if there's a story that highlights not only the youth crime crisis, but what social media is doing to kids in our society, better than the story of the Belltown Hellcat, who was back in court this week. Let's talk about it in our segment, Unbelievable. Boop. All right, this story is wild, and I hate to give this guy any attention. I truly do. But it is so insane, and the fact that I guess more isn't being done to protect the public from this guy is insane. And Nicole, can you try to find his age for me while I'm chatting about this? I'm not sure how he's pretty young, right? But he's not a kid. So he's known as the Belltown Hellcat. His real name is Miles Hudson. And he is known for speeding around downtown Seattle, specifically the Belltown neighborhood, and posting it on social media, going at freeway speeds on residential streets. He's got a ton of followers. I don't know what his latest follower count is. But Nicole, do you have some of these Instagram videos that he puts up? He's 20? Okay, 20 years old. So absolute moron 20-year-old. And he posts these videos where he's behind the wheel of a car going like 100 miles an hour on residential streets, doesn't care if he kills someone, is doing it for views, is doing it for clicks, drives this obscene, look at me car. And, there's this video SPD put out where he basically says every time he's been pulled over or gotten in trouble, he tells them like he does not care because this is about clicks for him on social media. Sorry. All right. Do you have this SPD video? Hold on. I got to play this for you. It's insane. Nicole's pulling it up.
I don't rate. I do this. I do this on social media. I know, but you know how much more popular it would be if you were doing it on a track? I mean, I got almost 700,000 followers. What's that? I mean, I got almost 700,000 followers. 700,000 what? Almost 700,000 followers. Maybe more popular. Yeah? Yeah. What you mean, yeah, bro? I'm just saying, like, I'm not no disrespect, but I feel like I'm doing my thing.
I know you're doing your thing,
turned it into a career, and the car's paid for itself. $650.
I got you, dude. But
Car's paid for itself. I'm doing my thing. Like, I'm going to keep doing this. And that's what he's told SPD. So, yeah, I mean, social media is absolutely, I mean, it's proven dangerous. I mean, you look back at the stolen vehicle issue with Kias, etc. Like, how did that start? Well, it started with little criminal wannabes on social media talking about how to easily steal a Kia. And then all of a sudden you had this crisis with stolen Kias and was it Hyundais or something like that. And so here you've got this little punk 20-year-old kid who doesn't care whose life he puts in jeopardy, has been speeding like crazy throughout Seattle. Police, you know, when he finally does get stopped or caught, he doesn't care. So he's now got two kind of parallel court cases going on. So he has 2 counts of reckless driving that he's been dealing with, but there's been a continuance in that case until August 12th. But then separately from that, he was in court this week on stalking and harassment charges, including accusations that he distributed revenge porn. So he was supposed to have a court hearing on that last week, but this kid, I'm not even calling him a kid, this punk 20-year-old, shows up to court with his face completely covered in this, it's like a virtual court hearing. The judge says remove it. He claims it's part of his religion, which weird because in that video we just showed of him with the SPD officer, he didn't have any face coverings on, but it's part of his religion where he has to hide his face in court. Really interesting. So anyway, the city prosecutor said at the time in the court hearing last week that he was making a mockery out of the court, refused to take off his facial coverings. So the judge said, okay, you're going to come back next week. You're not going to have any facial coverings. But when he came back yesterday, guess what he had on? Facial coverings. You okay, Nicole?
No.
Hold on. You have this clip?
Well,
sorry, we're having some technical difficulties, but it's all right.
I'm not sure if we do because that was saved. That's all right.
Let's see. Do you have the one of the judge telling him to delete his posts on social media? So he shows up. He has his facial coverings. He's calling it for religious reasons, but even his own counsel is like, you know, I'm not going to like back him up on that. So then get this, he's in court and this is serious. Like I said, this isn't like the reckless driving stuff is serious, but stalking and harassment as well. So he's in there for that. And what do they catch him doing in court? They catch him live streaming from court. Here's
Hudson himself was broadcasting the hearing, posting content from the courtroom to his Instagram, where more than 750,000 people can see.
And he's not taking these proceedings seriously in any way, shape, or form.
Okay. So, Mr. Hudson, you can't film, all right? If you posted something on Instagram or Twitch, I'm going to give you a minute to use your cell phone to take it down.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the judge for doing that, but he shows up, he looks like a little Hamas supporter, very strange, and good for the prosecutor for saying he's not taking this seriously. He's still not uncovering his face, claims some weird religious exemption that clearly is absolute bull because he is in videos all the time without his face covered. So you can stream to your 700,000 followers without a face mask on, but you can't be in court without a face mask on. And he does a lot of his content. He has a mask on. He tries to hide his face and be the Belltown Hellcat, but he's been seen without his face covering mask on or whatever. So anyway, he ends up pleading not guilty to the stalking charge and that thing around the intimate images. The judge did issue a bail, so he was taken into handcuffs, which
the marshals take him into custody, please.
Think is good for him. I mean, I'm assuming they went right back there and stripped that face mask off so they get a booking photo of him. $5,000 bail for the stalking charges, $2,500 bail for reckless driving charges. And then this is the kicker. And again, I'm going to give the judge credit. He said, he ruled that while this case is proceeding, Miles cannot, I don't think he's going to follow this. Miles Hudson cannot post or stream any content on Instagram or Twitch. He is also prohibited from driving his Dodge Charger Hellcat SRT on any public roadways. So this judge, the conditions that this judge has set forth should stop this 20-year-old from being able to continue the very dangerous behavior that he has been doing, totally no shame, on the streets of Seattle. If he can't drive his Hellcat, He can't stream any of it on social media. The question is, will he abide by that? Given his behavior so far, I tend to think the answer to that is no. And will the court quickly impose the sanctions? Will they arrest him? I mean, to me, best case scenario is he violates the court's ruling. The judge makes an example out of him, revokes his bail, and then he gets to sit his ass in jail until his trial. That is the very best case scenario, because I think you have a 20-year-old here who believes the rules don't apply to him, has been told that the rules don't apply to him. It's more important for him to get clicks and views on social media than it is to make sure that he's not killing anyone out on the roadways. So the very best place for him to be is in a jail cell where he can't wear his little mask and claim a religious exemption, where he can't stream to his 700,000 followers or any of that. And honestly, I'm kind of ashamed that so many people follow him. Like, you're contributing to that behavior. And I don't know why Instagram, and Nicole, if you want to jump in here, I don't know why Instagram would allow it. Isn't that enabling dangerous behavior? I think of that a lot with some of these people who do pranks that are kind of dangerous, where they do like mock, fake break-ins to someone's house and scare the hell out of them. And it's like,
that's to be monitored better.
Well, I mean, I get videos pulled for like nonsense. And you're telling me this kid could go 100 miles an hour down a residential street and stream about it and has criminal charges pending. He's using your platform to put people's lives in danger. And you're not yanking his. Why does he have an account on Instagram still?
So one of the things that he does is he puts over his videos reenactment, or this is AI. He lies to cover it. So he'll just write that, and so then Instagram has to prove that it's not, right? I'm guessing that's part of the way that he gets around all those things.
Yeah, but
because
by now they would have to be wise to that.
He's
been all over national news.
They should be.
That's insane. He shouldn't have an Instagram account. Instagram accounts are deleted for, taken down for much less reason, like political stuff all the time. So that is just insane. So I guess we'll see whether he is capable of following the rules that the judge put down for him. I doubt it.
Do think those rules should be more common for anybody under the age of 25, where you go to court for anything, and if you have guns in your social media post, if you have, then no more social media for you. Like, if that is contributing 100%. To your problems, no more social media.
Because you just reminded me of that gang member who, I think he was killed by another gang member. He was like a teenager, and there were images on the two kids. Their bodies were dumped on the side of I-5. And then you looked at their social media. They were known gang members. They had one of their photos they had, like the kid had 4 guns, like 2 in his waistband, 2 like this, and public images on social media. And so 100%, that's what these gang members are doing. That's a good point. Every judge should institute that. We just talked on the show yesterday about the youth crime crisis, about how serious it's gotten. Like some youth crimes are down, but violent youth crimes are skyrocketing. And you've got all these issues. You take away their social media, I bet that's one of the consequences that actually would matter to them. Because clearly they don't care about lives, right?
Right.
They don't care about any of that. They don't care about like ruining other people's lives or taking their lives away. But I guarantee they'd care about their freaking social media pages.
It's probably just about as bad as being in jail for them, right?
100%.
And then if you go on it, you go to jail, have fun.
This kid needs to go back to jail. So I you know what?
Well, he's in jail right now. I mean, somebody may have bailed him out.
Yeah, I think he got bailed out already. I could check the King County jail registry, but $5,000 bail, he just has to put up $525.
He claimed in court that he was broke. That's why they tried to get no bail, because he was broke.
Even though he's in that video with the SPD officer saying that the car paid for itself because of all the views he gets on social media.
Right.
So any good prosecutor would have said, hey, here's this video where he's telling an officer he has all this money.
Right.
So I hope that $5,000 bail is nothing. $2,500 bail is nothing. So I imagine he's bailed out by now. But you know what? Belltown Hellcat, Miles Hudson, I dare you to get back in your Hellcat and stream a video, because I, for one, would like to see you sitting in a jail cell for the next year while we wait on this case to go to court. I think that's, as far as society is concerned, that's the very best place for you. I mean, it's a catch-22, right? Because I don't want him out on the roads killing people. But like, just go like a post on Instagram, do something. Do something like that, and I dare you, because I think this judge, from the tone of his voice, would be very willing to see you back in front of him and to see you in handcuffs. All right, coming up in national news, what is this weird thing? It's like Democrats across the world were given like a directive to call Republicans weird. They were clearly given that talking point, so we're going to dive into it And the fact that Jay Inslee's also doing it now. It's weird. You know what it is? It's really freaking weird. First, I have encouraged you guys to take the First Mark Challenge. You know, we all need to save money right now. And so if you're looking at ways to cut costs at your family's expenses, you might not be thinking about your insurance because you can't just get rid of your insurance. But if you are dealing with your insurance needs on your own, I highly suggest, given the way the insurance industry is right now, to have a broker. First Mark Insurance is a trusted broker. They've been doing this in Washington for a long time. I'm a member of the First Mark family. Nicole's a member of the First Mark family. There's a reason, because it's just a superior service. You never pay them anything for their services. The First Mark Challenge, they're going to go through your current insurance. They're going to talk to you about you're going to talk to them about your insurance needs. They go out, they shop the market, they come back with their recommendations. And we just hear endless good things from unDivided fans about First Mark. Casey says they saved him 37% off his auto quote for the exact same coverage. Maggie says Levi at First Mark reviewed her car and home insurance. He recommended a new bundle that was half the cost and better coverage. She said, I was very surprised and so thankful. So don't wait a day longer. Take the First Mark Challenge today. Firstmarkinsurance.com, firstmarkinsurance.com. All right. In my ranting and raving about Governor Jay Inslee, earlier, you might have noticed one thing he said when he was gaslighting and lying to people and fear-mongering about the Climate Commitment Act. A word he used at the very end. Nicole.
That's reprehensible. You know what else? It's weird.
Weird. It's weird. And it was kind of weird because he's kind of sort of just like, it's reprehensible. And it's like he's thinking like, oh, did I forget? Oh, and it's weird. And it's weird. And it was notable because, of course, right now, for some reason, all the left-leaning news networks, Democrats, like out on the campaign trail, everyone supporting Kamala Harris, they've all of a sudden taken to calling J.D. Vance, Donald Trump, and other Republicans weird. Here's a little montage.
Some of what he and his running mate are saying, well, it's just plain weird.
These guys are just weird. That's who they are.
As weird and creepy as J.D. Vance.
Super weird idea from J.D. Vance.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's quite weird. They're just plain weird.
Just plain weird.
Just plain weird.
That stuff is weird. They come across weird, and then they start being weird. Yeah, they're weird.
Being a really weird.
He's such a weirdo.
Donald Trump and his weirdo running mate are weird. Deeply and profoundly weird.
They are weird.
These Republicans just being weird, it's just weird.
For lack of a better word, that he's weird.
What is going on? I mean, it has to be, right? It has to be like a dictate pushed out by the Democratic Party to say, just call him weird. Like, is that your masterful campaign strategy? Because, I mean, I am weird. Like, I admit that. I'm totally weird. I guess I don't understand the strategy there. And it's also been pointed out that if you're going to look at the word weird in the traditional sense, Democrats are way weirder. And there's been some really good, I mean, all over social media, but libs of TikTok and some other accounts. And they'll just put like, oh yeah, Republicans are weird, and all these images of like Democrats, you know, exposing themselves to children at drag queen story time, and Chuck Schumer flipping raw burgers that he has cheese on, and the what was it, the transgender person who showed their boobs on the lawn of the White House on Easter. And it's just like, they're like, yeah, Republicans are the weird ones. Got it. I'll believe that. I think you just own it, right? I think you just own it. Like, what's wrong with being a little weird? Okay, at least we're, first of all, in this context, weird means normal. Weird means normal.
I just want to see that memo that they all get, because there's got to be a memo. Well, how has that not been leaked?
I mean, even when Jay Inslee saying it, or else like someone started it and then they just all started using the same. It was like the border czar thing last week, where all the news outlets called Kamala Harris the border czar for all these years, and then just like this, like a flip of a switch, they were all like, she's never been the border czar. That's a phrase made up by Republicans. It was like they were all like puppets, and they're the whole same sentences being spewed by all these news networks. Kamala Harris was never the border czar, like all on the same day. And now all on the same day, they're like, yeah, they're weird. Their policies are weird. The Republicans are weird. J.D. Vance is weird. It's strange. You know what? I'll take that version of weird over whatever the hell this version of weird is any day of the week. All right, I just want to encourage you guys to make sure you take our subscriber show poll today, because I'm trying to get a sense of how many of you are receiving this $200 bribe. I mean, Washington Families Clean Energy Credit. Because right now on Patreon, Locals, and X, on our subscription platforms, very few of you have said that you got one of these in the mail or got a notice of one of these tax credits yet. I'll read some of your comments anyway. Nicole Olson said, I haven't got one and it doesn't look like I qualify. But if I lived in a different area, I could potentially qualify. Hugh Hendrickson says, Jay, send me 2 C notes. I'd be happy to reward you by voting for Reichert. That's the thing. Man, if they send you $200 and you can do without it, take it maybe and then donate it to Dave Reichert or some other sort of cause and let them know that that's what you spent the money on.
I like that idea.
Yeah. Nancy Campbell, I got a notice that I could apply, but I make too much money to qualify. Let's see here. Jackie says, my husband took one look and said, well, that's a bribe. Good for him. Not that I don't feel the impact of the rate hike this year and will gladly take the money. It's still dishonest of them. In the end, it won't change my vote. Yeah. And look, like I said, if you could use the money, it's just your money. It belongs to you anyway. It was already taken from you. As I said, we're going to have Todd Myers, our climate guru, on the show tomorrow, and he's gone in and done the math on what an average family has paid into the CCA, and it's nowhere near $200. So I'm not going to discourage you from taking the $200 if you need it. It's yours to take anyway, but wouldn't it be nice if you don't need it and you can get by to send it back with a big old F you? And I encourage you, by the way, to email Governor Jay Inslee. I'd tell you to be nice like I usually do. I don't care if you're nice, frankly. Is that bad? I just don't care. I mean, he is shameless. He is shameless, and he ought to know that his lies matter to people. His lies impact people's lives, impact their ability to provide for their families. And if you're upset, I think you should be upset, and I think he should know that you're upset. I mean, no crazy threats or anything, of course. I would never encourage that, but it's okay to send an angry email. All right, let's get to questions and comments before we get to our closing sanity check. Boo Boo Bear with a $10 super chat. There is too much cussing today. Allow me to pitch in on the cuss jar. No, you missed the beginning of the show. I told Nicole that the cuss jar was going to be hidden today. So I just was in a rage before the show, and I just knew we were going to let them fly. Rick says, $10 super chat. Brandi starting the show dropping an F-bomb, keeping them honest. That may be only like the 3rd F-bomb ever on the show. So it's... doesn't happen often. All right, Baron of Gray Matter, $2 super chat. No more tipping then. I just paid a $200 tip. What does that mean?
I think he meant $2.
Oh, $2
and
tip.
That was the super chat amount. So I think he meant $2
Gotcha.
and left out that.
Shamalama Ding Dong. I was so ready when I saw the title of today's episode. What was the title of today? Oh, now you've really pissed me off. Matt Gilbert, $10 super chat. Just think of how much the Belltown Hellcat contributed to the CCA. That $200. Well, that's true. Matt, that's a good point. Mm-hmm. You need gas in that Hellcat, and so he's been paying into the CCA, so I do appreciate that. Not. Dolores Wilson with a $20 super chat. Let's see. Someone with the, thank you, Dolores. Was there a comment with that,
nope,
or just $20? Thanks, Dolores.
It was just some money.
Someone with the handle me. I like that. Me. Gotcha. I see it. Inslee is a lame duck, just like Biden. It's probably the best thing for the country and state at this point. Well, Inslee's not even a lame duck per se. He made himself a lame duck, but for some reason in Washington, there are no term limits for governor. So we've had that doofus for 12 years, which is absolutely insane. I mean, I'm sorry. If he's not going to be nice, if he's going to be insulting and all of that, I know the show's called Undivided, but I am too. That is the dumbest politician I've ever interviewed. And that's saying a lot. I've done many interviews sitting across from Jay Inslee. It is like looking at a wall. You get nothing of substance out of him, a bunch of real weird, no, it's in my mind, lame talking points. He does this thing where he just talks you out of time, where he gives like 16-minute answers and won't let you interrupt him and says nothing of substance or importance. So I will not miss interviewing him. I don't miss interviewing him. It was a nightmare for me to interview him. Adorable, deplorable. This show has been effing great today. Thank you.
Even with all of my
what's going on over there, Nicole?
Technical issues over here. It's been rough over here. Let me tell you, I haven't even, it's
been a day.
But,
That's all right.
It's okay. It's just one of those days. I'm fine. I think my camera's a little off. I think
it's been a day. It's been a while since we had one of those days.
So, but I think it's, it's been effing great anyway.
Effing great anyway, regardless. Weiss Castle, it's on the weird thing. It's cultish to all of a sudden be saying the same phrase. Yeah, it is. It's very weird. Lancelot, I don't think I've finished this. Gaslighting nightmare. The assignments must show up every morning. There has to be some sort of strategic say this, but don't you think that would be leaked? Don't you think someone would leak the document?
There's got to be an email or a text or something somewhere. Or I do think that maybe stemming from the, don't encourage violence after the assassination attempt, that maybe they're all just saying we can make them look bad without being hostile, and we're just going to call them weird and people will get turned off. I don't know. But it definitely, there has got to be some sort of unity.
I don't understand the strategy, though. Barron made a good point. I thought Portland used to say weird was good. Wasn't it like...
Oh, Portland.
And there's another city where it's like, make something weird again.
Oh.
What is it?
I don't know
Portland
about that one,
else?
but Portland is weird. That was their motto or something.
But it's like, you can't tell me the party of extreme gender ideology isn't the weird party. Like, let's...
Yeah.
Come on, guys. Come on.
Seriously.
So just own your weirdness. Like I said, I'm very strange, and I'm fine with that. That's okay.
Somebody said maybe Austin?
Austin? Yeah, maybe it's make Austin weird.
Yeah, and keep Portland weird.
Keep Portland weird.
Thanks.
Make
Thanks,
Austin
Bob.
weird. So what's weird's fine.
Yeah.
So you just take their insult and you embrace it, and then it's not an insult anymore. It loses its power. I won't use the Eminem reference because I use it, I think, way too much. Yes, I will.
Yeah,
when Eminem in 8 Mile was in his final rap battle, and he decided, since he was going first, that he was going to rap about insults about himself, and then he took all the power away from the other guy who had nothing left to say, because he's like, he just said everything about himself that I was going to say about him, so he just dropped the mic and he just walked away.
Yep.
Works every time.
Another word for weird is unique. And
unique.
we all want to be unique.
You're right. I am unique. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, before we get to our closing sanity checks, speaking of weird, it's a weird one. First, how many times in recent memory has your financial advisor not reacted to current events and also not made a change to your investment portfolio in light of major events? So, and then of course there's been so many. You look at global unrest that's happening, ground war in Europe for the first time in a long time, what's happening in Israel and Gaza, what's happening on the presidential stage. So these are all things that your investment advisor ought to be monitoring and keeping you in the loop on. Zach Abraham, Chief Investment Officer, Bulwark Capital, host of the Know Your Risk Radio podcast, talks about this all the time. It's called risk management. It's their number one focus. Bulwark Capital looks for opportunities to lower risk, lower cost, give you as much upside as possible. You only get one retirement, which is exactly why you need Zach Abraham and Bulwark Capital in your corner. Learn about Bulwark's strategies with their free common sense investing guide. Get yours by going to knowyourriskradio.com. That's knowyourriskradio.com. Investment advisory services offered through Trek Financial LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor. Investments involve risk and are not guaranteed. Past performance doesn't guarantee future results. Pete Buttigieg, what happened to you? I don't know if I'm sad to admit this, but when he ran for president, I kind of liked him. I mean, give me a break now.
I
really
you liked him a lot.
I mean, he was a good speaker. He was very smart. I hadn't been fully red-pilled yet. And now I'm just so ashamed of him. So anyway, have you guys heard about these Zoom meetings with like white women for Kamala? And they did a white men for Kamala's mass Zoom meeting where all these white men zoomed in to talk about their support for Kamala Harris. Probably if you're a single woman dating, you might want to watch that Zoom meeting and see if you can spot anybody that you've been going on dates with, because like that's an automatic no. But so anyway, Pete Buttigieg, white man, he was on this Zoom meeting and made the weirdest statement, truly weird, about abortion.
I'm so glad she has made freedom the theme of her campaign, because I think in so many ways that's what's at stake. And yes, women's freedom is Exhibit A, after Donald Trump demolished the right to choose. But of course, men are also more free in a country where we have a president who stands up for things like access to abortion care. Men are more free when the leader of the free world and the leader of this country supports access to birth control.
So wait, men are more free if women can have abortions, I think is the point that he's making. which I guess is technically true if you're a man and you knock someone up and you're not ready to settle down and raise a child. So you're more free if that
Still
woman
not his
can
choice.
If you're more free if that woman can abort the child. It's a very strange. I'm pro-choice. That's a very strange argument, Pete Buttigieg. All right, that has been your sanity check. Go ahead, Nicole. I missed the sanity check for today. It's been one of those days. Deep breaths. That has been your sanity check for today. That has been today's episode of Undivided. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. We appreciate every single one of you. We will see you back here on the live show tomorrow at noon. A reminder, if you have not signed up to support the show, please do so. It's just $5 a month. You can sign up at undividedpod.com. That's undividedpod.com. See you tomorrow. Stay weird, everyone. Stay weird.